So hello and welcome to a conversation with Dr. Kellyn Lee. My name is Emma Smith. I'm the project manager with Age UK Salford, working on empowered conversations. Kellyn, dead nice to see you today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you for asking me back. First time obviously didn't go too bad.
No, the first time was a bit dodgy and I thought we could polish up on it for this one, if that's okay.
Practice, practice, practice.
So if you haven't joined us before, it's a webinar function. It's just Kellyn and myself on the screen, but you can talk to us via the Q&A at the bottom. So that's either just to give us a wave and say hello, or if your question pops into your head at any point, pop it in there. We'll either pick it up straight away or we'll make sure that we've got time at the end to chat about it. So if you haven't met me before, Empowered Conversations deliver communication courses for family carers across Greater Manchester, and we also work with professionals. And in Salford and Bolton, we offer one-to-one support for family carers. And then we do some extra stuff like this, like webinars and discos and other engagement activities. I think that's all I need to say about me. Kellyn, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Hello. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Kellyn Lee. My background is I'm a chartered psychologist. I've been an academic researcher for just over 11 years. So worked on many projects that are predominantly related to ageing and dementia, mainly dementia related projects, both in the community, in hospitals, and also a large part of my work is in relation to care homes and improving care home care. I'm also the founder of Wiser Health and Social Care, which was a startup company from the concept of material citizenship. I wanted to get it out to as many people as possible. So set up Wiser Health and Social Care. And I've also just set up a community group. Well, it was in December last year, which is called the Dementia Care Hub. And that is for people that are still living in their own homes, people that want peer support, just to come along and talk to other people about the position that they're in, how they're managing. And I also run an acceptance and commitment therapy program, which is called We Care Dementia Care. So it's really looking at how informal carers, family members manage their emotions, the things that show up for them when caring for a person with dementia. So that's me. That's what I'm doing at the moment.
Brilliant. And we're going to use that word hybrid. We're doing a bit of a hybrid today, Kellyn, aren't we? Because we're going to go presentation, but we're going to be chatting, and I'm going to be chatting rather than just handing over to Kellyn. So we're going to be chatting through the slides, so it should feel more conversational. Just going to check and make sure there's no points in there that we need to pick up before we start. Lots of hellos. Oh, both. Rebecca said she wanted to see it. It's nice to see us both again. Oh, that's nice. I'm having it did as well. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Right then, in that case, shall we start the presentation, Kellyn?
Okay, so can you see those slides?
Yeah.
Let me... Right, okay. Yeah, so that was just me talking about myself. Yeah, so as you mentioned, Emma, I think the slides are there as prompts to give us some kind of structure of what we can talk about, but I think it's much nicer just to kind of have a chat. So do you want me to kick off?
Go for it.
Yeah, so I guess if any of you don't know what material citizenship is if this is your kind of first time being introduced to it, in a nutshell, it's looking at those everyday objects that we use in a care setting such as a care home that enhance care. So, kind of really looking at what does care look like. Care doesn't always look like people doing things for other people. Care looks like sort of scaffolding, so supporting people to continue to do those things that they've always done. And with material citizenship, I took it from a kind of a psychological perspective of the relationships that we have with objects and what they enable us to do as people. And what I found in my research was that actually people that are living in care homes, particularly people with dementia, don't have a lot of access to objects, because there's this sense of a person with dementia in a care home and objects in the same kind of domain, and there is this risk of somebody becoming hurt or somebody being harmed. So I kind of pulled that apart a bit in relation to, what's really going on here. And really kind of emphasize the point that we need to really balance what is the real physical risk here and what is the psychological risk. So when I talk about psychological risk, if we remove everything from somebody, what does that do to their quality of life? What does it do to their sense of well-being? What does it do to them as a person? And I guess from my time as working in a care home as a care assistant and the research that I've done in care homes, it's this kind of sense of diminishing self. You know, this person kind of their identity being chipped away. And my argument is that objects, you know, these everyday objects that we use can prevent that from happening and actually enhance somebody's life. So if we look at objects as this sort of extension of our personality, we can demonstrate who we are by the things that we have, but also we can influence how other people view us. So if I've never got any objects to use, you may see me as being somebody that can't do things because I've never been able to show you that I can. Equally, I've never been able to show you what I struggle with, which I may need support with. So it works in both sides, but it's this kind of thing that in a home, we do things with things to make it our home. It's not just a shell. Whereas moving into a care home, if we don't have these things, how do we really make that home? How do we kind of reduce that institutionalization? How do we stay psychologically safe in an environment in which we are restricted? So that's kind of where material citizenship comes from. It's reimagining what does care actually look like? But, you know, in this day and age, what does it look like? And I'm arguing that it looks like people being supported to continue to do as many things as they used to do and starting to really question what's the real risk here and who is that risk for?
You know what I was just thinking of there, Helen? I was thinking of, you know, when you go on holiday and you go to a hotel, it's really nice because there's nothing there. It's everything. Oh, it's so calm in this hotel room. There's nothing here. I've just got my bag of clothes, my book, my phone. That's it. There's nothing else. But it doesn't ever feel like home because you haven't got your stuff and you can't actually do anything in it. You can relax in it, but you can't do anything in it because you might have an iron, you might have a hairdryer, but you can't really do anything else, can you? Relying on other people to come and do it. So if you want your sheets changing, someone else is going to come in and do that. If you want it hoovered, someone's going to come in and hoover it. You can't do it yourself. So it feels relaxing because it's a holiday, but it's never home. And I was sort of thinking of that in that, you know, as you move into a care home, because you don't have your stuff, it's that sort of, I'm disabled from doing what I want to do. I can't make it home because I haven't got, and I call it stuff, you call it objects, I say stuff. Because I haven't got my stuff there. Yeah. I can't make it feel like home. It doesn't feel like I haven't got my duster to dust this. I haven't got my favourite mug for my cup of tea in the morning. So it never ever feels really like home.
And we can take it a step further than that as well. So, you know, if you imagine when you go into, you talk about a hotel, we know that that's not home. We know it's something for a short period of time that it's set up for us to not do those things. It's our break from the day-to-day reality of who we are, in a sense. We can be somebody else for a couple of weeks or a week, you know, other people can do stuff for us. So that's different. So when we talk about people moving into a care home and getting them to settle in, how do you settle into somewhere that is like a holiday that's being extended, but not only that, you can't leave. Equally.
And there's no swimming pool.
No, exactly. I mean, what's a hotel without swimming pool? And also there is this sense of my belongings haven't turned up. So my suitcase isn't here. I might have my phone in my bag because I brought my bag in, and I might have some clothes with me, and I might have some toiletries and stuff like that were in my hand luggage, but my luggage actually hasn't turned up. Now, I might be able to phone somebody and say, where is my luggage? And they might say to me, I've got no idea when it's going to arrive because it's been lost in transit. So again, there's that sense of, I don't know where my stuff is. I don't know when it's coming. I'm totally reliant on other people to bring my stuff to me in the hope that it will turn up. So it's a real disempowering position. I don't have control over this. I don't have choice over this. I may ask somebody, you know, can you get my, curling tongs for me, my straighteners for me, I don't actually know whether they're going to turn up or not. I equally often don't have them, I haven't got the money to even go out and buy any. So I'm kind of a little bit helpless here.
And yet we're expecting you to settle in.
You're expecting me to flourish. You're expecting this to be a better place for me than the one that I came from. Because otherwise, why did I move in here? If this isn't better for me, why am I here?
That just sitting with that uncertainty, just that disempowerment, that uncertainty. Where is my stuff? It doesn't feel like a home. They're calling it a home. People are referring it to as my new home, but it's not their new home because, well, one, there's a load of other people living here, but even my room doesn't feel like my room because my stuff, I've got a picture of my husband, I've got this, but my stuff's not here.
No. And there's also, I'm just going to move on to the next slide, because this is what we often see. Okay, so because of, kind of the scene that we've just painted there, what we often see is increased confusion. And as we've just described, that, of course, there is increased confusion because I don't know where my stuff is. This place that you're talking about being home doesn't feel like home. I can't interact with stuff in here to make it home for me. Equally, you've made my bedroom look nice, but I'm encouraged not to even be in there. So even the place that does look a little bit more like home, perhaps, you want me to actually be out in the communal areas, socialising with everybody else. We might see increased agitation because even though I'm asking you for stuff, nobody's actually listening to me. My stuff isn't turning up. So where is it? I might get angry about it, and yeah, if you were in that hotel and nobody was actually giving you any answers to your questions or doing what you needed them to do, wouldn't you have confusion, agitation, and become quite angry? And yet, if you mix that with a diagnosis of dementia, what you would largely get is, this is challenging behaviour. Let's look at medication. Okay, so this is really important in relation to how we view people with dementia in this setting. The lack of choice and control that we've talked about, the fact that this doesn't feel like a safe place for me because I can't do the things that make me feel okay. So if I'm not feeling okay, the likeliness is I'm going to act in a way that shows you that I'm not okay, as we would in any other. It's a reasonable response to the setting that we're in. There was also this kind of thing that I found that things go missing, which also feeds into this kind of confusion, because I may have something in my room that then a member of care staff thinks, actually, I don't think she should have that because she could burn herself with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it. I'm going to take it downstairs. So then when I go to look for it, it's not there. That's really problematic. And the biggest thing that happens with is laundry. So clothes being moved from my room without my say-so, without me giving consent. And this all feeds into this kind of sense of objects being overlooked. So when somebody's getting cross with you because, they haven't got their skirt, or relatives coming in and saying, hold on a minute, why has that woman got my mum's cardigan on? Or why has that guy over there got my dad's trousers on? Or where's that jumper that I bought mum 2 weeks ago in it? I've never seen her in it. This actually feeds out as well much more to the whole care experience for relatives that are coming in as well and kind of saying, is this a safe place? It increases dependency. So as we said, if you take that hotel analogy, I'm now reliant on other people to give me the answers to things that I need, or I'm reliant on them to cooperate with me to get what I want. And this sense of loss of identity and empowerment, it's huge, and it shouldn't be underestimated. Just because I have dementia doesn't mean that I can't still take part in my life the way that I want to, doing the things that I would like to do in the way that I would like to do them. And this is where we see, the use of antipsychotic drugs, because, we know that they have been historically overused in relation to dementia, particularly in a care home setting. And there is this knee-jerk reaction, I think, because, and this isn't out of malice or any kind of, it's generally about, I don't know what to do. They're behaving in this way. I don't know what to do. It must be the dementia getting worse. And it's but it's a jump too far. We need to be looking at, okay, well, is this a reasonable response for what is going on for this person? Yes, there may be situations in which a person can't communicate particularly well. So it's really kind of being that investigator, that detective, and looking at what is it about this environment? What is going on for this person? Is this a reasonable response to what is going on, or is this part of the dementia? But we shouldn't jump straight to the dementia. Yes, we need to be aware the person has dementia. Yes, we need to be aware of the type of dementia that the person has. But what we shouldn't do is over-symptomise. Because as we've just said, me, a person without dementia, if you put me in that situation and all these things were going on, I would be reacting in a very similar way.
And I suppose, you know, the biggest thing is that we're as we go in, we're disorientated. Mm-hmm. You know, because of our dementia, and we're in a new environment, so we're already disorientated. We've got people telling it it's our new home.
Yeah,
you've got just, it's layers upon layers of things going on. And you know, if it's my home, can I go and get toast at 4 o'clock in the morning and put my favorite jam on it? If it's my home, then I could do that. But yeah, if it's not my home, then I can't do that. You know, those sort of things.
Yeah. And it's also another thing that we have to bear in mind, and something that I found in my research, was that the majority of people that had dementia in the care home had either moved in because of a hospital admission or because of a crisis at home. So a lot of them hadn't chose to be there. So not only did I not choose to be here, there's all this other stuff going on, and then you're just expecting me to settle. These aren't the optimum conditions for me to kind of move in. You know, I mean, I remember when I moved house 6 years ago and moved into a new area, new home, it was disorientating for me. I remember walking out the drive and not knowing which way to go, and phoning my husband saying, do I go left or right to the shop? You know, because I just couldn't remember. And, you know, this is a significant change in somebody's life. So if these everyday objects can help make that transition easier, which we know they can, why aren't we taking them seriously? Why isn't this something that we all do, but we're overlooking it because we follow largely a medical model? Okay, so nutrition, medication. What does the person need? How do we keep them physically well? Okay, well, we know that, but what are we doing to keep them psychologically well? How can they flourish in this? If we know objects can have a massive impact in relation to how somebody settles into this environment, how they, you know, see themselves, how they demonstrate themselves, why do we not do this?
And Kellyn, so in my head, I'm thinking about objects, thinking about stuff. So I'm thinking the smallest stuff that might be important to us might be a duster. Mm. And like the biggest thing might be my favourite armchair that I watch telly in at night time. Mm. Is that sort of, is there anything else? So it's like, is there something smaller than a duster that actually you've come across and actually that really was important to someone in terms of their stuff?
So one thing that was really important, I mean, I'm not talking necessarily small in size, but it was a pair of curling tongs. So one of the women in the care home, when I was doing my research, she just was amazing. I absolutely loved her to bits. Her face, her smile would light up the room, you know, and she was quite mischievous as well, and I kind of liked that about her. She wanted to, you know, be up to no good. So, you know, I used to sit with her and she'd say to me, oh, Kellyn, I love your hair. And I'd say, oh, right, okay. And she'd say, I love the colour, you know, I love the way that it, you know, the way that it looks. And I said, well, you know, I do, obviously it's not my natural colour. And also I use straighteners in order to make it look like this, because it obviously doesn't look like this when I wake up in the morning. And she said, but I don't look like me. I don't have, and she had just grey flat hair, and she said, I'm not a person who has grey flat hair. My hair, I would want my hair blonde. And I said, well, why don't you ask the hairdresser then if she can dye it blonde? She hasn't got that colour, I've asked her. So, and I wondered whether there was this sense of, well, older women don't have their hair dyed blonde, you know, they would look like these kind of minky colours. And also she said, you know, my hair's not flat, I would always curl my hair. but she wasn't allowed to have those curling tongs. And what was really interesting about this was, one, every time she looked at herself, she didn't see herself. You know, it knocked her confidence. She didn't like the way that she looked. It wasn't her. But also staff, they would say, you know, because she said she doesn't recognise herself when she looks in the mirror, staff would say that's the dementia. And it wasn't. It was because she didn't have those curling tongs, which she could use every day, that made her look like her. And this is the other thing where I kind of talk about the over-symptomizing. It's really easy to jump to she doesn't recognise herself. Oh, that's the dementia, because that's the narrative that we are given, you know. But it wasn't. It was because she didn't recognise herself the way that she currently looks, because she didn't have the things she needed to look like her. And when I asked a member of staff, you know, can she have her curling tongs? We were told no. And I said, why is that? She said, well, she might burn herself. And I said, have you got any evidence? Has she ever had curling tongs in here? No. So how do you know she's going to burn herself? Well, I don't, but I know that she's not allowed them. That was it. So, you know, it's kind of what is going on here that means that people are restricting people from having things when there isn't actually any evidence why they shouldn't have them. And look at what it's doing to this woman, you know.
It's like that perceived risk, isn't it? No, they can't have that, you know, before they've even considered what the importance would be. I'm getting my hair cut today and I can't wait, because at this point I look in the mirror and I don't look like me. And that feel, and it's not a nice feeling. It's your identity, isn't it? How your hair is, the clothes that you wear, the stuff around you, that sort of, it forms who you are. And I can't imagine.
Particularly in a communal setting. So if you're looking at a communal setting, is different in itself anyway. I mean, most of us don't live with a lot of people that we don't choose to live with. I mean, some of us live with people that we don't want to live with. Shh. No, it's nobody in my house. But you know, we don't live with people that we, you know, lots of people. So we move into this communal setting. Everything's a bit strange. Everything's a bit confusing. I don't even look like me, and yet I'm supposed to go and be a social butterfly. How likely is that? I don't actually even want to come out of my room. And then that causes problems for care staff as well, because then they worry about the fact that you're always in your room, you're not integrating, you're not communicating, you know, and care staff are concerned about their residents. They are concerned about their quality of life. But this, you know, material citizenship, introducing these objects, enabling people to be themselves the way that they want to be, can actually reduce a lot of stress on care staff as well. And that's something else we found when it came to the implementation of material citizenship in care homes, that it didn't just have a positive impact on those that were living in care homes, but it also had a positive impact on the staff.
And you just imagine that sort of, you're literally almost taking the blinkers off staff member, because they've always been told, this is how it is. You can't change it. And then suddenly the blinkers are off and they're like, wait a minute, if Bob has this, and this, Bob's a lot more settled. Bob's a lot more, he wants to communicate more. He wants to come out of his room. Because he's got this, and this, whatever those objects might be. And
also, do you know what a great job I'm doing? Because I came into this job to improve the lives of the people that I'm working with. I came in this to make their life better. That's what I do. But I'm not allowed to do that, because I'm not actually given permission to do that. I'm told what not to do when I know that they would like it. So, and there are care staff that do this, but it's not documented because of this fear of getting into trouble as well. And I worked with so many care staff, and I was saying to them, what you are doing is amazing, and you're not noticing this. So they were leaving thinking, oh, actually, yes, I am doing a great job. There was one member of staff there was a woman who wanted a curry on a Friday night. But they'd been told, you know, obviously that could give her a dicky tummy, so she can't have that. So a member of care staff went home, cooked her a curry, which actually is probably worse than getting it from an Indian restaurant, because she hasn't got the health and hygiene certificate at home. She brought it in, she gave the woman the curry, and she said she had a great time on the Friday night and she was happy for the whole weekend. But she didn't write it in any care plans or anything because she was scared of getting into trouble. So care staff are doing amazing things. but it isn't a cohesive, it isn't a, it isn't repeatable practice, because actually they're not kind of showing it explicitly in care plans. They're not showing it in the documentation. And what is often documented is the actual, medical care that is given. Somebody's had a good day. Okay, how do we know that? Why? Somebody's eaten, they slept well last night, they've had the medication, all that kind of stuff, or they may have taken part in an activity that was put on this afternoon, or they had a visitor. So all that kind of information is in there. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that stuff's not important, but if I was to walk into a care home tomorrow and work with some people, I would want to be able to enable them to keep doing the things that they are doing, because I know why it's important to them. And I'll come on to that a little bit later in our conversation, the impact that this has had with objects that you just wouldn't even think about, the most mundane of objects that make the most significant difference. It's quite profound, actually, in relation to the change that occurs.
Made me think there's almost like no depth to those notes. It's just like, yeah, tick, 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 done this, done that. Like, who does not like a curry on a Friday night? Curry on a Friday night, that makes you, it's a Friday night, it's the weekend, it's the start of the weekend. So not only is it enjoyable and you're going to have a good time, but it also helps you to work out what day of the week it is. Yeah. It's Friday because I'm having a curry, which means it's the weekend. So I'm going to feel a bit, even if I don't work, I'm still going to be a bit giddier because I feel like the weekend started.
Absolutely. And, it's the small stuff that makes the big stuff, and I think what we tend to do when it comes to care, particularly regulated care, is we try and do everything just so, and we forget that we're human beings. We're thinking and feeling human beings who are experiencing life. And our relationships are not just our relationships with people. We have relationships with objects. And actually, a guy called Danny Miller, who's an anthropologist at, I think it might be at UCL, sorry if I'm wrong, but he said, that we kind of overlook the importance of objects, and that the relationships we have with our objects can also enhance the relationships that we have with people. And this is very much something that I focused on in relation to, if I have these things, I can show you who I am. And there's a psychologist called Hilga Dittmar, and she talked about this kind of actor and observer role. And the actor role is having those possessions, this extension of the self. I can demonstrate who I am. I can show you my identity. You can get to know me a bit more because I can show you. And also the observer role, this sense of, because I'm watching you and I can see what you are doing, that can change my perception of who you are and what you need. So they are two really fundamental parts of the relationships we have with objects in relation to how we see ourselves and how other people see us.
And I suppose as dementia progresses and we become maybe less verbal, the importance of us being able to display or show who we are becomes even more important.
Yeah, so there was a guy, and I remember this, and it just seems really silly, but it isn't, because there was a guy in one of the care homes, and he didn't speak very much. He loved Iron Maiden, which I thought was amazing, because also the care home were great in that they played Iron Maiden, because most care homes would go, oh no, we can't possibly play that, other people won't like it, and they were really great. But what he would do, and I watched this, he had his cup of coffee and he'd take his glasses off and he'd stir the coffee with the arm, because I don't think they stirred it well enough for him. But then they took the glasses away from him, because, so in some ways they were doing amazing stuff, but then they took the glasses away from him because that wasn't the appropriate way to use his glasses. And you kind of go, why does it matter? And it's because, again, you're kind of looking at that person as a person with dementia who's doing something inappropriate with an object. Actually, it's not inappropriate. Maybe if he had a pen, he could have stirred it with a pen, but he didn't have a pen. He didn't have a spoon to stir it with. So what he did was he took it in his own hands and thought, well, actually, executive functioning working, I can actually use this to solve this task. So I think it's just allowing people to kind of use things in order to maintain their identity. So, we have been, implementing this in care homes. So when did I start? August of last year, I decided to make the leap and kind of leave the university. I still got a foot in there. I'm still working with them sort of on some material citizenship stuff, but more kind of a consultancy basis than actually as a paid member of staff now. Because what I wanted to do, I got a bit frustrated in relation to academia. It's a great place to be, but for me, I really have to have that kind of practice element, you know. And because I'm a social care researcher, that isn't as strong, I don't believe, as, say, for example, if it's health. So within the NHS, you know, the knowledge that we gain, we can then filter that through the degree courses, occupational therapists, nurses, doctors, that kind of stuff. When it comes to social care, we haven't really got that infrastructure in relation to the dissemination of knowledge and turning it into something. And because I'm a very practical person, I think what I needed to do was I needed to see this in practice. I wanted to, the idea of the PhD was to try and help people, to change people's lives. And if I felt if I stayed within the university at this point, I wouldn't achieve that goal. So I've stepped outside of university and set up Wiser Health and Social Care. And what we do is we deliver material citizenship to care organisations, so to care homes. So since August of last year and towards the end of this year, we will have it in 43 care homes. So I'm absolutely chuffed to bits with this. It's England and Wales and soon to be in Scotland, and it will be our first homes in Scotland, so chuffed to bits for that. By the end of next year, we're hoping if the plans come off, you know, because, you know, we all know what happens in relation to change and budgets and all that kind of stuff, but we're hoping to have it in over 200 care homes by the end of next year, which again, absolutely thrilled to bits with. And I guess this is because I know that it's changing the way that people are working, and I know that it's changing the way that people perceive care. And I really want us to reimagine what care looks like. So on average, by getting it into 43 care homes, not the 200, we are supporting 1,400 people live a better life, because we are enabling them to have the things that they want and to live their life their way. And not only that, but there is this, even if I ask for an object and I never use it, the fact that I can, if I want to, from a psychological perspective, is huge. Because if you're telling me I can't have it, that means I have no control. And that is, you know, if you think of somebody removing your control, your feelings of control, that is an incredibly negative and disempowering experience, which people aren't going to thrive. So with this, what we are doing is we are enabling people to live a better life, the life that they would like to live as much as is possible. But we're also increasing confidence in around 3,000 staff currently that are working in a care home setting. And I'll go on to this in a minute in relation to the impact. Because what Material Citizenship has done is one care manager, registered manager, said to me, what you have done is you have given us a framework in order to work from. And what we can say, and this is again where risk comes in, we're frightened of doing things that we may get blamed for. If somebody gets hurt, that's going to be my fault. And actually there are legal implications. So if a regulator comes in and, you know, doesn't agree with this, then that could have real implications for care staff and that care home. So it's really important to have this framework to show this is an evidence-based programme and this is why we're doing what we're doing. So we can show why, we can show how, we can show what we would do if something changed. So building that confidence in staff, you know, and the registered manager said this gives us that safety net. This gives us the opportunity to be able to do this. So I think that's really important, because when I was doing the research in care homes, what I also noticed was, although we research people that are living there, people that are working there, there are all these other things around the periphery that impact what actually can take place. And in essence, if you have regulators that say you can't do that in here, it effectively caps what can and can't happen. And it's also educating those regulators that, you know, it's okay to do this because these are the reasons why we are doing it. It's a thought through process. We are not noticing that somebody has dementia. We are aware that there are complications, but we are trying to make their life as good as it can possibly be within this setting. So that's kind of where we are with it at the moment.
how do you, so there's two things to measure in my head. How do you sort of measure the difference it makes to the residents' lives, and how do you sort of measure what happens to the staff when you're, you know, when you're training them? How do you sort of capture that journey from, no, we can't do this, to, oh, actually, I've just thought about this and I've thought about that, and that would be really good?
So in relation to residents, what I steer clear of are quality of life scales, because my quality of life fluctuates on a daily basis, particularly being a perimenopausal female. You know, you can ask me on one day how my mood is, what I'm feeling, what I think about my life, and I could give you one answer. You could come to me 2 days later and I may well give you a totally different answer. Okay, so I think we also have to be careful with what is it we're measuring and for what purpose. So what I tend to look at in relation to people that are living with dementia in care homes is what difference is it making, how much are they engaging with it, and what difference is it making? Are care staff seeing differences within that person on a regular basis? So it's much more about looking at the whole as opposed to kind of scales. And equally, when we're talking about dementia, quality of life is very difficult to actually map out, particularly if the dementia fluctuates, and as we know, it can do regularly. So if I give you some examples, I think this might actually show you how we measure that in real terms. So when I delivered the Material Citizenship programme, I talk to care staff. I really kind of, it's a very interactive program. This isn't about me talking at people and telling them this is how you do dementia care. This is about saying, why are objects important to you? What would you need? How would you do it? What would it look like? And we really engage in lots of active discussions, lots of different activities. And I did this because when I was carrying out the research, when I interviewed people, as a psychologist, I use psychodynamic methods in order to look at the importance of it to the person themselves. And what I saw practices change because that light bulb moment happened where somebody went, actually, that's really important to me. So that's really important to them. So, for example, Dorothy, she wanted sherry in the afternoon. There was a member of staff who came in and was interviewed by me. She told me she wanted her glass of wine, and she would want her glass of wine in the evening because that's part of her routine. And I said, oh, funny that, because Dorothy has been asking for sherry in the afternoons. The following week, they had sherry in the care home, and there were more than Dorothy was having the sherry in the afternoons. So, you know, there was that connection made. There was that sense of, I'm not being told what to do, but I'm understanding that this is important, and therefore it's important to me, therefore it's important to them, and therefore I'm going to take action to do it. So these are some scenarios in relation to objects. So one was a newspaper. And there was a woman in the care home who wanted to deliver the newspapers to the residents there, but staff had said to her not to do it because that was their job. And again, this is another thing in relation to a care home setting. This is my job. This is what I get paid for. If I give it to you, does it look like I'm shirking my responsibility, or does it look like I'm not doing my job? You are totally doing your job by enabling somebody else to do that, because that's you improving their quality of life. So with the newspaper, she wanted to deliver them. She was told she shouldn't because it wasn't her job. But after the Material Citizenship training, staff said to her, you deliver the papers. So she now delivers the papers to the residents, and staff reported that her well-being levels looked as though they had increased. Equally, the people that she was delivering the papers to enjoyed her going around because they had a chat at the same time. So this wasn't just something that elevated her or improved her quality of life because she was, you know, experiencing this positive sort of feedback, but it was also enhancing the lives of the other people. And one of the members of staff said there was one day, she said, I forgot about it. She said, and I went to take the papers round, and she said she tore a strip off me because because I'd delivered the papers. She said, you know what, I'll never do that again. You know, so it started to change the way that people were. There was a blue chair, and you know, you think, well, who cares about a blue chair? But this woman had just moved into the care home, and she was flat refusing to engage with care staff. She didn't want them in her room. She didn't want personal care. So as you can imagine, for care staff, this is a really difficult position because I don't know what to do. I've got a job to do. We need to make sure that she's looked after, but she's not enabling us to do that because she won't engage with us. After the material citizenship training, they identified a blue chair and she wanted this blue chair. So they went, luckily, she still had the home. And the chair was moved into the care home. And they said she was like a different woman. She now allows us to come in, relationships are much more positive. And they said what it was she used to sit in this chair, and her husband had a blue chair as well, and they used to sit with each other all of the time. Her husband had died and the other blue chair wasn't there. But for some reason, just sitting in this chair kind of made her feel okay. And then because she felt okay, she was then much more receptive to engaging and developing a positive relationship with the care staff. There's kitchen utensils and a flask and a debit card. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to talk about one that actually isn't on here, and because I think this is really indicative of the problems that not having objects can cause on a broader level. So there was a woman who refused to get out of bed, and whilst I am fully, encouraging of if someone wants a duvet day, have a duvet day. Just because you live in this establishment doesn't mean that you have to get out of bed every day and do what's expected of you. But for her, this was becoming problematic because what staff saw was her mental health deteriorating. They were also concerned that she was going to start developing bed sores, and they were spending a lot of time going in there trying to kind of encourage her to get out of bed. So one, it was a lot of resource. Two, there were medical implications, and three, they were concerned about her mental health. So they identified that she liked to bake bread. So they went out and they bought a bread maker, and she started to bake bread for the home. So she was baking bread for the residents. The key thing about this that I can't emphasize enough that should have been in the care plan is that bread maker gives her a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And that in itself reduces the likeliness of her mental health deteriorating further. It reduces the possibility of her developing bed sores, and it equally reduces the amount of time staff are spending trying to find different ways of getting her out of bed. So I think it's really important to look at this, Helen,
so where did the bread, right, you made a bit of a jump. Tell us, how did they get from she won't get out of bed to let's get a bread maker? What was the link?
So because they'd attended the Material Citizenship program, and they kind of thought, this woman is somebody that is, want of a better word, a problem for us because we don't know what to do. And actually what they want to do is make sure that she's okay. And that, as I said, they'd identified these kind of red flags. So they sat down with her and just had conversations with her about what does she used to do at home? Well, what does she used to do at home? What does she like doing? What's important? And it was this, the baking of bread came into the conversation. And I think this is the thing, it's not using material citizenship as a tick box and saying, right, okay, what objects would you use? Equally, we can kind of say, well, what sort of things did you do at home? Well, I know you did these things. What objects would you need in order to do those? And are these things that you would like to do in here? Because actually, some people might say, I don't want to do a thing. I want you to do everything for me. I'm paying for this. You do it for me. That's my choice. But if I want to do these things, I should be enabled to. So it's looking at what are the kinds of things that she was doing? What did she do at home? What did she enjoy doing at home? Can we make that happen in here? And that's when they identified that she enjoyed baking bread. She also used to bake bread for the neighbour. So not only did she bake bread for herself, she would take it round to the neighbour as well. And the neighbour would also cook stuff and she would drop it round. So they had kind of, a really good relationship going on. It's just really opening out that conversation of not just who are you? Do you have children? Did you have a partner? What was your occupation? What hobbies do you have? Yes, we need to know that stuff. But what did you do in your everyday life at home? And how can we replicate that in here to make this home for you? How can we support you in that? And that's the key.
And, you know, just from that, like the blue chair for me, I think is safety for that woman. It's safety. It feels, if I'm sat in there, I'm okay. It's home. Yeah. I'm all right. And that purpose, you know, the newspapers is purpose, isn't it?
Yeah.
My job, I'm doing that. I'm taking the newspapers out. I'm baking the bread. I'm baking bread for other people. So I've got purpose. I've got meaning. I feel empowered. I've got a job. I've got a role. I've now got a role in this community rather than stuff is being done for me. We can do it with me.
Mm. And actually saying that, I mean, this is going back to my research as opposed to what's happened since. There was a woman living in one of the care homes that I did the research in. And when I first met her, I thought she was the daughter of the person she was sat next to, because she looked really young. She was 69 years old and she looked a lot younger. And what she wanted to do more than anything was get involved with the washing up and the laying the tables and the wiping the tables down and the, you know, taking people's crockery and stuff and putting it in the dishwasher. And dependent on which members of staff were dependent on whether she was encouraged to do that or not. But what I found really interesting was when I mentioned her to staff and I said, you know, she had possibly the most advanced dementia in that home. So there were other people that had a mild cognitive impairment that weren't allowed to do things at all. Even taking a cup to the sink. Oh, no, I'll do that for you. Don't you worry. You sit down. I'll take that. She was encouraged to do all of this stuff when certain staff were on, which was amazing to see. But when I said to them, how is it that she gets to do all of that? Particularly bearing in mind that her cognitive functioning was really very poor. They said, well, because she's young. So it wasn't just about dementia. It was about ageism as well. Because you look old and you're in this setting, we're not actually expecting you to do things. However, I don't think it matters how old I am. I would still need to feel like I've got purpose. I've looked after a family. I still look after a family. Yes, at times I find it annoying, but actually it gives me a sense of purpose. And I'm not sure that I would be happy just to sit and have people running around after me. Equally, people that I care about, you know, those, because there are lovely relationships between care staff and residents. So, you know, if I see people doing lots of things for me, but they don't allow me to do anything back, all of a sudden this relationship becomes unequal and I feel quite uncomfortable with this. And I feel like I'm a burden. I feel like I'm not doing my bit. So actually, what a gift to be able to say to somebody, you know, help me out. And actually with this woman, what was really interesting was she said to me, I'm hoping that the more I do this, the more likely I am to get a job here. Because she didn't see herself as a resident. She saw herself as actually doing a job the same as them. And if you stop me from doing that, you are putting the potential for me to get a job in here, you're putting that at risk. So she'd get really angry with people if they did it for her, because I need this job, I want this job, and I want them to offer it to me. So she had a goal in mind. If I do all of these things, I will get that job. But staff didn't know that.
Oh, I'd love to know if they gave her the job.
As I say, there were people that were there that would encourage, and there were people there that wouldn't. And that was, you could really see the difference in her when certain members of staff were on. And again, this is why I think material citizenship training is important, because it's encouraging everybody to understand what's important to that individual, because that's true personalised care. That's when we know that we're doing a great job.
You're right, and it's so fascinating. I'm conscious of time, so we're in our last 8 minutes. If you've got any questions for Kellyn, drop them in the Q&A now, and we'll get over to them. Let me just see if we've got any questions in there. I think people have just been oh, wait a minute. Kathy said, can we read this one out, Kellyn? Is that okay? Mm-hmm. I've been visiting a few homes to familiarise myself for when Dad is no longer safe and needs a secure environment. A common feature is lack of access to outdoors without an escort due to health and safety rules. Someone with dementia who is physically fit and used to wander around outdoors, this is a real problem. if you put the outdoors in context of a material, that is important to the person. Yeah.
And there's some wonderful work by a woman called Debbie Carroll, Carroll, and she's got a thing called Step Change, and she's done lots of work with care homes that, you know, you get care homes that make these, you know, spend a fortune on creating these environments for people living with dementia outside, you know, a garden for them, and actually people just need to get outside and use it as they typically would. So that it may be an idea to actually look at that, and even, I would say, even introduce care home managers and say, are you aware of this? Because this would be something that would be really suitable for my dad if he was ever to move into a care home.
And it is because Debbie and I can't think what the
is it Mark
Debbie and Mark, it's simple stuff, isn't it? They're not looking, you're not looking at thousands and thousands of pounds. It's just like really opening up the opportunity that the outside offers residents and also staff for how to utilize.
We're very much aligned, the work that Debbie and Mark do and the work that I do. Theirs is outside, mine's inside. And this is, you don't have to spend a fortune on these activities in order to stimulate people. What you can do is use the objects that you've already got. Maybe buy some in. The person might have them at home that they can bring in. But it's actually using that everyday stuff to do those everyday tasks that are important. We don't need to be really clever about it. We just need to understand how somebody wants to live their life. And as I say, we're very aligned in relation to Debbie and Mark do the outside, how you would use that outside space. And mine is, it doesn't matter whether you've got this fantastic, you know, hotel-like care home that's got a massive coffee maker and polished floors, and it doesn't matter if nobody's allowed to do anything in that space. So it's about the objects that are in there and how we interact with them that makes it home. The same as if you are outdoors, it's the way I use that space that makes it mine and makes it meaningful to me.
I think it's another conversation, but, you know, like activity coordinators, it's very much like we've got to do an activity. We've got to be, you know, a red coat. We've got to entertain people. When you're actually, if we start just thinking about the normal stuff that's involved in us all living, there's tons and tons of activity there that would engage people and actually even purpose and meaning, rather than, you know, not saying that there's a problem with bingo or this or that, but there's so much more, and we're missing it by just calling it an activity. We've got to do an activity now. It's the afternoon, let's do an activity.
And also what you get a lot of are regulators as well. And I'm really not trying to beat up regulators, because they do a very difficult job and they have also an agenda that they need to follow. But I think it's gone too far in the direction of we need to stop everybody doing things. And there is this kind of sense of, what activities are you enabling people to do? You know, show me your rota for the week in relation to the activities that people are doing. And I would argue that that's not normal life. You know, I may well go, I'm going for a bike ride with my friends tomorrow night. That's something I'm doing this week. That's the only thing I'm doing this week that isn't work or kids or whatever. So, you know, me doing things during the day is part of my life. If I choose to do bingo, which actually I quite like bingo, but if I choose to do that, that's my choice. It's a bonus, it's an extra. It's not part of my identity necessarily. It's not part of my identity every day, you know? So it's really looking at how we use that time in our lives to maintain that identity, to do the things that make us feel like life is worth living, to make us feel like we have purpose and meaning, because whether you have dementia or not, we all need to still feel like we have a purpose.
And that, you know, the reason to get out of bed, that was what it was with the lady who was baking the bread. She now has a reason to get out of bed, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just going to very briefly, unless there's any questions, I'm just going to you know, I'm not actually going to go into this too much, but just that staff felt before they did the Material Citizenship training, they did feel uneasy about taking risks, you know, because they found it uncomfortable because they didn't know whether they were going to get into trouble. And this gave them that kind of, you can do it, you're allowed to do it if you follow the framework. It enabled them also to balance that, well, what's the real risk of physical harm and what's the psychological harm that could be done without doing that? And it also just gave them confidence. You know, they kind of went away going, okay, I know that I've got a framework to use where I can now explore, you know, what's going on for people, rather than this kind of feeling of not knowing what I can do. And that actually is a really difficult position for them to be in, because that creates anxiety in care staff, in that if I don't know what to do, that doesn't give me good feelings, because I feel like I'm failing the person, and in doing so I don't feel like I'm great at my job. So this sort of, you know, I think that was the most encouraging thing. You know, it was always about improving the lives of people that are living with dementia in care homes, but I was also acutely aware that in order to improve the lives of the people that live there, we have to improve the lives of the people that are working there. And if we enable them to be empowered and to have autonomy and to know their residents and to support them to live the life they want to live, then they're going, you know, hopefully we can keep those great staff and also attract more staff to the field. And they're on the screen. They're just the courses that we run. But we're in 2 minutes.
Staff retention is massive. You know, there was a Skills for Care report out this week just saying how numbers have dropped. But we have got, what have we got? I think we've got comments rather than questions. Kathy said, it's really interesting webinar. Thank you very much. Lots of things to think about. Thank you, Kellyn. Thank you, Emma. And Claire has said, fabulous work you're doing. It is absolutely fabulous. And it's that when the work that we do around communication, we call it nudging. We're nudging people to think slightly different. We're not like saying, think this, think that. We're nudging them towards curiosity. And it's the same with material citizenship, isn't it? You're giving them that framework and you're nudging them towards that curiosity of, well, what did someone's life look like before they came here, or 20 years ago? What did somebody's life look like? How can we make it feel a bit like that, so it actually suddenly this strange environment starts to feel like home?
Yeah, it's kind of have those conversations, you know, get to know each other, but also staff need to be given permission to do that, rather than this kind of task orientated, you know, this is who you're getting up this morning, they need this, this, this and this. It's actually, you know, it being a bit more fluid. And I've heard some care providers say, well, we can't possibly do that because it would be chaotic and we can't run like that. But my answer is always, why not? Yeah. Why can't we reimagine what care looks like? How do we know if we never try?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's brilliant examples up north where actually, by letting people get up at the time they want to get up, it changes your whole staffing profile. You don't have to have so many people in the morning getting everybody up. Well, actually, Marge, she's a night owl. She wants to stay up late. And she wants to sleep in. And then when she wakes up, she wants to have some breakfast. So we need to make sure that breakfast isn't only between this time and that time. And actually, you don't have to have your tea at 4:30 because you're not an 8-year-old.
And that's a really interesting point in relation to, if we look at the staff that we are attracting, and we, you know, there are a lot of people that maybe want to do to work in the school hours, but because it's all, you need to be here first thing in the morning, and you know, so those people are excluded from that. Well, actually, if most people are active during those times, you know, if they're allowed to get up when they want to and have breakfast when they want to, actually maybe we could restructure. Does it have to be this kind of rota system of morning, afternoon, night staff? We could actually have more people on during those kind of hours of when perhaps normal activity would generally take place.
It's a whole nother conversation, Kellyn. We'll get our pens out and we'll start reshaping it all. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for coming along. It's been fascinating, amazing conversation as always, Kellyn. We've got another conversation. This is different. We've got a conversation with Rosendale. We've never had a conversation with a whole area, so we're going to have that. That's in September, so that's the 7th of September. I'll send you details out about that. But in the meantime, thanks everybody. Have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy your summer. Kellyn, enjoy your summer holiday. It sounds like it's an adventure.
See you later.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.